Welcome to the Confidence in You podcast, designed to help you build confidence and create positive, lasting change in your life. And here's your host, 𝙗𝙗𝙧𝙬𝙧.
Hi, just a quick note before we get started today. If you would like to watch today's episode, please head across to my YouTube channel, 𝙗𝙗𝙧𝙬𝙧. Otherwise, just keep listening. Here it comes now. So welcome back to the podcast. Today we have another very special guest joining us, Shevonne Joyce. Shevonne is 𝙗𝙬𝙧's Head of People and Culture and responsible for up-leveling 𝙗𝙬𝙧's people strategies, propelling the firm forward as an employer of choice and helping to drive business growth and industry disruption. Shevonne has 18 years of experience in consulting, leadership development and executive management and is a qualified organisational coach. She's also an author. Her book, The Unlikables, delves into the neuroscience, psychology and philosophy of leader likability. Her teammates like to think of her as 𝙗𝙬𝙧's own resident hype girl. She can often be found revving up the team, supporting them to not just reach their goals, but smash them. And when there's something to be celebrated, she's there with fireworks. And when something goes wrong, she's there with a supportive shoulder to help everyone through. She's a mum of two beautiful neurodivergent children, is proudly autistic, diagnosed recently with ADHD, and living with a neurological disorder. Shevonne has achieved a lot, including being selected as a judge for the Telstra Business and Women's Business Awards, being named as one of the top 10 Australian entrepreneurs by My Entrepreneur magazine, named as one of the top business thinkers by Smart Company alongside Naomi Simpson, and listed in the 99 limit-breaking female founders by Thrive. So let's give a warm welcome to Shevonne for joining us on the podcast today. Thanks for being here, Shevonne.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background, your journey, where you've come from and where you are now.
Yes, so I've had quite an unconventional journey, I suppose you could say. I grew up in country Victoria in a little town that had about 600 people in it at the time. I was the first person in my family to achieve a postgraduate level qualification at university. So I knew, way back when that I wanted to do something different and do something big. And I felt like I had a bigger purpose. But I didn't know what that was for quite a long time. I moved out of home quite early. I was having to support myself quite early in my life and worked my way up throughout my jobs in my career, putting myself through university and working in, I kind of just fell into human resources, to be honest. I started working in a role answering phones at an HR consultancy, and that's how I fell into human resources and was like, I really love this. Worked my way up throughout my corporate career. I've worked for a number of different organizations, from startups to global firms, and a lot of different cultural contexts here and both overseas. And I've also had the experience of running my own businesses. And now, as you mentioned, here I am with 𝙗𝙬𝙧 heading up their people and culture.
Excellent. Thank you for that summary of your career so far. You spoke of starting your own business. So back then, what led you or inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so for most of my corporate career, what I didn't realize and what I didn't know is that I was actually entrepreneurial. And for some of my workplaces, that was, my commercial acumen, my strategic thinking, my higher level thinking, my ability to tackle everything, from different angles was celebrated. And then in other workplaces, it was a bit of a point of contention. And at the time, I was really confused by that because, we're talking a long time ago now, entrepreneur, like being entrepreneurial and being an entrepreneur wasn't as understood back then as what it is now. And so I had one executive say to me, everything you've done with this is really great, but can you just do your job description? And that was really deflating, because I was the kind of person who couldn't do a job without wanting to do it better. And I couldn't figure out, why they wouldn't want to solve these particular issues that were costing the company a lot of money. And, anyway, that was a whole thing. And then it occurred to me that, somewhere along the way, it occurred to me that I was actually entrepreneurial, and I'd had my first child, my daughter, Stevie, and I had thought to myself, it's such a big thing having your first child. And, I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do now from a career perspective? Because I'm quite an ambitious person, and I'm always someone who, I'm a builder and I'm a change maker. I'm always doing something. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? And if I'm going to do something, it has to be really, really meaningful. And so I had to think about, my career to date and all of the skills and experience that I'd had and what my transferable skills were. And I decided that I was going to go out and start my own business, and really just, I guess, utilize all the skills and talents that I uniquely had, and applied that to something unfettered, just like, I'm going to go and do something my way. And I was hoping that, I would be able to have that work-life balance that I was looking for, but also, focus on helping to solve problems and change the world in a way that was meaningful for me. And so what ended up happening is, I went out and started my own business, and the rest is kind of history. It's been such an amazing journey, a really enriching journey. I've learned a lot. And, I think having that experience of, being employed in the corporate world and then going out and running your own businesses, because, I've gone from just having one business to then running multiple businesses, which is a whole other skill set in itself. I feel like it really prepared me for this role that I have now with 𝙗𝙬𝙧𝙚, and, finding an environment where, somewhere like 𝙗𝙬𝙧𝙚, where being entrepreneurial or being an intrapreneur, which is, being an employee who has entrepreneurial skills, is not only just seen as an added value or benefit, but it's they actively recruit people who have these unique blend of skills, unicorn skills. So it really prepared me for this particular role that that I'm having now. And again, being able to apply all of my unique skills now in this particular role, has been really, really beneficial. But, for me, I really just wanted the opportunity to be myself, to have a go. Like, what would happen if there were no rules and I could just apply all of my skills and talents exactly as I am? Like, what would happen? What could I achieve? And making sure that I did something that I felt was, that my daughter could be proud of. That was really what first inspired me.
Obviously, you've been successful in the businesses that you've run by yourself. And the world changed a couple of years ago when COVID hit, and none of us expected the outcome that we're now living with and adjusting to the new normal. You had to navigate running a fairly new business. You had multiple businesses. You had a fairly new business. You had to navigate running that in a very changed environment, volatile, uncertainty. It was all there. And you managed to do that, to get through that couple of years of COVID. And then what happened?
Well, if we could write a book about things that I never expected to happen, I feel like my story is kind of, it's the kind of story that you couldn't make it up if you tried, really. So yes, I was running my coaching and consulting business for quite a few years, and I'd always had a passion about going into fashion and having a fashion business. It was something that had been on my mind for a very long time. I'm very passionate about ethical, sustainable, and innovative fashion. And I had made a decision that, I really loved my coaching and consulting business. And, I had been successful building that. And I was working with some amazing clients, which is actually how I first met Marianne, who's the managing principal of 𝙗𝙬𝙧𝙚𝙬. She was my client. So that's how we first met. But I came to a point where I felt like I really love what I'm doing, but I really want to change. And, the coaching and consulting, as fabulous as it was something that I fully had to run myself, because I was the person delivering the services. And I decided that I wanted a standalone brand and a standalone business where I could build a team and run things a little bit differently. So that's how I came across my fashion brand. And my husband and I decided to buy this fashion brand. And the minute that I saw it, I had this soul reaction. Like I knew this was always meant to be mine. It was a really bizarre experience. And I bought that fashion brand and we invested a lot of money into it, because even though it was a really beautiful brand, by the time that they had decided to sell the business, it had been a bit dormant, because they were making decisions about what they wanted to do with it. And so, we bought it and we invested a lot of money into it to kind of get it where it needed to be and get it up and running and manufacturing our first collection and all of those wonderful things to relaunch it, which was really exciting. And when we were looking at the brand, we looked at the fact that it was selling into multiple markets around the world. And one of the considerations that we had specifically discussed was if one brand, like country, goes down for a particular reason, if there's an issue in a particular country and the sales go down in that particular area, we have these other areas that can help support it. So it seemed, quite enticing from the perspective of there was multiple eggs and multiple things running at one time. What we did not anticipate was a global pandemic that would shut down 100% of markets and make the business almost impossible to run, not only from a manufacturing perspective and a consumer perspective, but also just getting supplies and trying to coordinate things. I mean, there were the shortages of things that you just would never see coming. And I had to completely change our business model and completely change the way we operate. Even getting photo shoots done was really difficult. So particularly because we're working with children's wear. So making sure that we had safe photo shoots. There was one point where I actually had to coordinate a complete remote photo shoot where I organized 5 photographers from around the country who also had daughters, and they were all the same or similar sizes. And we did a dollhouse theme where each photographer photographed their own daughter in lockdown, and we had one photographer edit it and put it all together so that we could actually release a drop in lockdown and get a photo shoot done. So there were, the acrobatics I went through during that time to get that business through COVID was really quite unbelievable. And then I finally felt like we had got through the worst of it, and we were starting to see, I was starting to see inquiries coming back in terms of photo shoots and birthday parties and red carpets and all the things where people would typically want to buy special outfits like ours. And then in January this year, I got COVID and it triggered a neurological disorder. And I ended up completely paralysed. I almost had respiratory failure. I couldn't even smile or move my eyebrows. I lost control of my bladder and bowel. And I've become disabled. It's been completely life-changing. And I've spent the past 7 months, in rehab, learning how to walk again, learning how to use my body again. I still have cognitive and physical impairments from that experience. So obviously when that happened, I had to stop my business altogether. We also had my husband's furniture business, handcrafted furniture as well, which when this happened, he had to put that on ice as well because, I was in hospital. We didn't know what my outcomes would be, and we still don't know. And, he had to completely take over looking after our kids and supporting me and, helping me in my recovery. So it was, I felt like I'd spent, I'd bought the business 6 months before COVID hit and had just, invested all of that money to get it going. And then COVID hits and feeling like I've turned myself inside out, to get the business through this. And then in the end, COVID got me. So, that completely changed, it's completely changed my life, obviously. And, going through the recovery, not being able to work in my business anymore, because it's quite a fast-paced environment. There's a lot of moving parts. It requires a lot of me capacity-wise. It's very fluid, and with the cognitive and physical impairments that I have, it makes it quite difficult to operate in that environment. So it has just been an absolutely huge journey. And, it just so happened that I was talking to Marianne one day about how I was going, and my recovery, and, what am I going to do now? And it came up that, there was an opportunity for me to work at 𝙗𝙬𝙧𝙚. And of course, I absolutely took that. And 𝙗𝙬𝙧𝙚 is such a diverse and inclusive law firm. I'm able to work 100% from home. I'm working 4 days a week now. I started out 3 days a week, and I've been able to build capacity to 4 days a week. But they have just been so wonderful and so supportive of my disability. And, obviously, honestly, this, having this role with 𝙗𝙬𝙧𝙚 and being able to, even though I'm not the same, being able to still apply my skills and talents to something purposeful that I'm passionate about has been one of the most important parts of my, my recovery to date, because it's given me something to focus on outside of, this experience. It's also helped to build my capacity as well. So it's been, absolutely amazing in that perspective, and really interesting. I've spoken to Marianne. I was like, if this hadn't have happened to me, I wouldn't wish this upon anybody. But if this hadn't have happened to me, I wouldn't have ended up here. My life would have been different, because I would have been off building businesses and, all of that sort of stuff. So in a way, it's kind of a weird silver lining. I feel like for whatever reason, I was meant to go through this, and I was meant to end up here, but definitely not an experience that I could ever have anticipated, happening. I didn't even know that, that a neurological disorder was a potential complication of COVID. And it's not just COVID, there are other viral infections that can trigger this as well. But yeah, I didn't even know that was, it's rare, but it's obviously really, it's completely, changed my life, and I didn't even realize that was a possibility. So yeah, the past 7 months have been a huge, profound experience and life-changing in a number of ways. There are things that I'm grieving and things that I'm sad about, but there are also things, it's character building. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that I'm learning as well.
Going from being in intensive care on a respirator.
Well, I wasn't actually, so they didn't actually have to ventilate me in the end. Okay. So when I was in emergency, the doctor had said to me that they were preparing to ventilate me. But in the end, they didn't actually have to do that, which at the time, to be honest, I couldn't really even keep my eyes open. I was, I kind of describe it as, my mind was so small that all I could do was lay there and just tell myself to breathe, breathe, just keep breathing. And that was really all I could think about. But in the end, I was lucky that they didn't have to ventilate me. But respiratory failure and being ventilated is a very real consequence of, this neurological condition. So,
So in intensive care and not being able, like you were paralysed, like you had paralysis.
Yeah.
And you lost control of your bodily functions.
Yeah.
And so 7 months later, you're now working 4 days a week. You're able to walk and you're able to interact in society normally. Like, that is a massive achievement. So obviously COVID had a massive effect on your health. You haven't let it stop you being the go-getter that you are. tell us, how do you stay positive, which you are, even in the face of such adversity that you've been through?
Yeah, so I didn't have to go into intensive care, but I started out in the COVID ward, and then I went to the neuro ward after that, and then I went to the rehab facility. So this is a really great question. And, being completely paralysed and being in a hospital bed, I don't think I fully comprehended what was really going on in the beginning, because, the neurologist came in and I was like, so I'll be out of hospital by Wednesday, right? And they were like, no. No. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, Friday? And they were like, no. So it took me a while to fully comprehend what had actually happened to me. And then, all I could think in that moment was, well, I've just got to do what I can, to help myself and to try and get better. So when I was lying in a hospital bed and all I could do was wiggle my toes, I just kept wiggling my toes all day. And then when the physio came in for the first time, and I couldn't even sit up myself, they had to help me sit up and get to the side of the bed. And then, I was convinced that I was just going to walk, and then when I couldn't even lift my foot off, like my heel off the floor, that was the moment where I completely broke down and I was quite distraught, because I think that was the dawning moment where I realized something big has happened to me. And from that point forward, for me personally, it was just, I have to do everything I can to walk again and to get out of hospital and to get home to my children, and there was one point where the neurologist came in and said, how are you feeling about your diagnosis and about what's happened to you? And I was like, look, obviously it's not great, but I can't focus on that because it's happened and I can't change that. All I can focus on now is doing the best I can to get better. And, I'm not here to judge anybody's reaction to such a profound experience. That was just my personal reaction. I can understand how, people would be quite distraught about their diagnosis, and, it's a big thing, so definitely not minimizing or dismissing the experience of that in any way, or anybody's personal reaction to that kind of experience.
Yeah.
But for me, all I could keep thinking was, I just have to get better. And, not walking again, not recovering just wasn't an option for me.
Yeah.
So they did say to me that I was quite psychologically flexible, were the terms that they used in that experience. But in saying that, it sounds really easy to be like, oh, well, I'm a go-getter. I was just like, I'm not giving up. I just need to get better. But the actual practicality of that, like for me personally, learning to walk again was harder than childbirth. And I've had 2 children. It's this bizarre experience where I don't really know how to describe it. It's this bizarre experience where something that was just so automated in your life that you didn't even think about, that you just cannot do it. You just can't get your feet to lift off the floor. You just can't even feel your legs or move your legs, or you forget how to stand up properly, so the physio's like, well, you need to tuck your bottom in and then you need to do this. And I'm like, you just completely forget how to do something that's so ingrained. It's a really huge experience. And so, I've really been focused on honoring the journey of that. Overall, I would say I'm really positive, and forward thinking, but I'm not going to lie and say there haven't been moments where I've been absolutely distraught.
Yeah.
It is a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but I'm just taking each moment as it comes. I've had to face things like, accepting the possibility of my own medical vulnerability now. I've been told if I get COVID again or flu A, that it could be life-threatening. And so those sorts of questions are things that you don't typically anticipate having to face when you're, 36 years old. But there's also a lot of unknown as well. So, it could be life-threatening, but they can't tell me if it will be, or they can't tell me how much recovery I will get, from this point. Even if I do get good recovery, from this point forward, I could relapse and end up back in hospital. So there's a lot of uncertainty that you're learning to work with. And I think through each stage of this recovery, I've just been focused on doing the best that I can at the time within the context of what I've got, and just not giving up. But I also have to admit that being a go-getter in a lot of, it's great, but also, one of the key challenges for me throughout my recovery has been allowing myself to rest.
Yes.
Because, as a go-getter, I just want to go, go, go. And, I can walk again. My walking isn't perfect. It isn't what it used to be. I still have numbness and altered sensation, but I can drive again now. But I still can't do all the things that I used to do in a day. And so I've had to go through a process of accepting what I can do, learning to trade my energy, so if I'm working today, then I'm working, and these are the other things that I'm going to need help with. So it's been, it has been a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I guess when you're faced with the situation where you don't really have a choice but to survive and to recover, you just do it, you just have to get through and keep focusing on, today my most important job is wiggling my toes. And then, the next week, the most important job might be lifting my, heel off the floor or whatever it might be, and just keep trying, keep practicing, and keep doing the best you can at the time. But they have said that, to be honest, they have said to me that the fact that I've had as much recovery as I have, considering how severe my onset was, it is pretty remarkable. So I am really grateful for that as well. And you just have to keep looking forward and being hopeful, Helen. That's,
you do. And the thing is, this podcast is about confidence, and you and I are both naturally confident individuals. But it doesn't mean we're not prone to feeling down some days, or that we face adversity, or that we have all of those other feelings. So what are some common misconceptions about confidence, and how could we combat those misconceptions?
Yeah, I think there's so many misconceptions about confidence, and it really depends on who you are as well, because as we all know, the way that society views you depends on the person that you are. So, the way society would look at a confident woman versus a confident man, or even, a confident person of color versus a white person, there are all these different social contracts that we have, which is part of social inequity, that determine people's perceptions of somebody's confidence. But there are, some people can see confidence as arrogance, and particularly where women are concerned, being aggressive or arrogant or self-serving. And I think for women, it's kind of socially acceptable to not be confident. We are told that we shouldn't be confident, and we should be placating and, all of those sorts of things. So sometimes when confident women do come along, people don't know how to take it and see it for what it is, But there's also misconceptions out there, that confident people are always confident in every situation and always know the answers, like you had pointed out. And I really think confidence is understanding that no matter what happens, it's not always having a clear path. It's not always knowing the way. It's more trusting that no matter what happens, that you will have the tools and resources to deal with it. And if you don't have the tools and resources to deal with it, that you will be able to find them. And so, thinking back to being in that experience of being in a hospital bed, I had all of the experts and all of the rehab, which I'm really, really grateful for, to be able to have that that system to help support me.
Mm.
But did it knock my confidence? Yes. I mean, confidence isn't a constant. You're going to have experiences in life where your confidence level is less than it would have normally been, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's understanding no matter what happens, you will build confidence in a certain context, and then maybe your life will change, or maybe your context will change in some way, and you'll go through the process of having to rebuild confidence. And confidence is a skill. Some people are naturally confident. It's a skill that they naturally already have. It's kind of like creativity,
Yes.
Some people have to build that skill and learn how to build that skill, but we all have the ability to be confident. So for me, it's trusting that no matter what happens, I have the confidence in my ability to build the skills and to get through it.
Yeah. And I think you've summarised a lot of things there, that no one is confident 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And we all have ups and downs, and life comes at us in challenges. And the whole journey of life is you can't have the good times without the sad times. So you have to have the peaks and the troughs. Yeah. And for me, confidence is a lot like you said, that we have the belief in ourselves that the adventure we're going on, we'll be able to find a way. Like, we'll either have the skills inside us that will come to the surface, or if we don't, we will stop and look around and go and find them and ask for help. So confidence for me is also about engaging with others and asking for help, because you're confident in being able to ask for that help. And that's a really important thing for me, is that throughout my career and my journey, that having a team around you, whether that be a team that reports to you or whether that just be your close-knit family, friends network, having that support network, your partner, those people close to you that you can throw ideas around with and be able to talk about the good times and the sad times, right? And the challenges. And you never fail if you keep going. Like, it's just a learning experience. So that's how I look at life as well. So
basically, yeah, 100%. And I feel like, you really touched on an important point there, because I feel like as leaders, sometimes it's not about what we know. It's about knowing what questions to ask.
Yes.
And not coming from the perspective of always feeling like you need to be right or you need to have all the answers, being confident that you can source them, just like you said.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to recognize problems, bring them to the team or bring them to whoever it is, and work on solving them. And, to your point, I think sometimes the adversity that we go through helps build our confidence in life overall, because we get a different perspective of the ups and downs in life as well. So while there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of my health and my recovery from this point forward, I think that I do have confidence that no matter what happens, that I will be able to try my best and I'll be able to achieve some really great things. So it's quite an interesting experience. Like, I really think that confidence and vulnerability are tightly connected, and I'm not sure that a lot of people would really see it that way or consider it that way.
I absolutely agree with you. Some of the most important things have happened in my career when I've been very vulnerable with my boss, with my team, and I've just said, I don't know, or I need help, or this has happened, let's figure out a way through it together. And not having to have all the answers, because if you have all the answers, you don't need your team. And I always believe my team should be at the forefront of everything, so that they can come to me with, hey, what about this and what about that? Or if I throw a question at them, they can bring a different perspective. So I learn each and every day from when I'm in a corporate environment, from my team. I also learn each and every day from my clients now. It's amazing, after I finish with a client, when I stop and I reflect back on the notes I've taken, that I also learn from their experiences. So confidence comes from so many places, and it's all around us if we keep our eyes open and want to have a look at how others learn, and then we take confidence from that as well.
Yeah, and I definitely think confidence comes from a collaborative culture. So if we have a look at, a firm like Legalite, we have a hugely collaborative culture. Everybody contributes to everything in our firm, including the strategic plan, writing our employee policies and strategies. We'll draft something and then we'll get the team together and we'll ask them to write it with us. And so, there will often be times when working at Legalite that, the leadership team will learn from junior staff. There's this beautiful knowledge sharing and being able to cultivate that, that kind of environment is really, really important. And I think, it helps to build confidence in everybody and really, share that knowledge and those experiences and, your different perspectives as well, which is really great. And I once had an executive say to me, to your point, that, his success as a leader is all about surrounding himself with a team that are more talented than him.
Absolutely.
And it was the most profound thing that an executive had ever said to me, because, he said to me that I can't be everyone. I can't be everything to everyone,
No.
And so being open to that learning and trusting your team, having the confidence in your team to be able to come up with the answers and to help, move things forward is really important as well. So people often think of confidence as like confidence in myself, but it's also confidence in other people and, the future as well. There's quite a lot of components to confidence.
So you've done some amazing things in your career and you're stepping now into another exciting role in an environment that you are able to use all of your entrepreneurial skills in a business like that's not yours. So that's an opportunity, and the diversity that I see, your LinkedIn posts and all that sort of stuff is just, it sounds like an amazing culture. So in terms of your legacy, what is the mark that you'd like to leave on the world and how would you like to be remembered?
Yeah, so for me, I just want to be remembered as somebody who always tried her best at the time. Who's somebody who wasn't afraid to give things a go, who was the person who was like biting the burger of life and had sauce running down her chin. I was the person who was like, well, I'm going to dive into a fashion business. I'm the person who was like, well, I'm going to do this now, and just gave things a go, and always, no matter what she was doing, always put her heart and soul into it. And, I didn't always get it right. I failed as much as anybody else, which is obviously part of learning. But I just want to be remembered as someone who always tried her best with the best of intentions, and put her all into everything that she did. And I think if that's the way that people remember me, into the future, I'll be pretty happy with that.
That's fantastic. I love the burger of life analogy. I'm going to use that. So just to wrap up, in one sentence, what's the best advice that you'd give to someone struggling with confidence in themselves, or someone that's facing a setback or a challenge, a big challenge in their life, who just doesn't have clarity at the moment? Because when we have those big setbacks or life throws us something like you've been through, having clarity, it just goes out the window because you're just caught up in everything. So what's a little bit of advice that you could give to someone?
There's so much, but in one sentence, I think, first of all, is for me, it's about, in each moment that you're in, understanding that this is preparing you for the next best version of yourself. Whether it's, you're having a really great time, or whether it's, a huge setback or even a small setback. Even if it doesn't make sense at the time, just understanding that it is preparing you for the next best version of yourself. And honoring your emotions, like being able to honor your emotions in every phase of your life, not feeling like you need to tough it out or push on, or, really being compassionate and kind with yourself, and understanding that how you feel at any particular time is valid, and allowing yourself to go through that experience and process it, and, be able to take the learning from it instead of feeling like you just need to force your way through, or just continue on. And I think the third one is like just trusting, like I said before, that even if it doesn't make sense and, you're going through a really difficult time at the moment, trust that you have the tools and resources, or you're able to find them to work out what the next step is. And you might not know what you're doing in 6 months' time or 5 years' time or all the rest of it. But as long as you are able to identify the next step and then the next step, before you know it, you'll be moving along your journey.
Yeah.
And that you're going to learn skills and experience from this that are going to help you, moving forward, and help to define the person that you're always meant to be, talking about legacy. So yeah, I would, don't feel like, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of like toxic positivity out there, in terms of you just need to, keep going and whatever. But really, in reality, it's understanding that patience, success is about patience and endurance. And sometimes we have to go through these experiences that don't make sense to us, but there will be a silver lining in there somewhere, and you will see it and you will understand it when the time is right, even if you don't understand it now.
Yeah. But honoring where you're at, and honoring where you're at. Okay, because emotions need to come out, whether they're happy or sad, they need to come out. If we suppress them, that's when we get that physical manifestation. And so if you're going through a sad time, allow yourself to be sad. The secret for me is, yes, honoring that and crying and being angry and upset and all that, they're just emotions, but not staying down in that dip of that really, really low for too long. Like, honor it, feel it, work through it. But then, as you say, realize that, okay, this is happening for a reason. I don't know what it is, but just trusting that, okay, I've been through all those emotions. I'm just going to take one step now to do something for myself, that self-care. And I think that's really important, that self-care is something that, toughen up, you'll be all right, push through. That, no, honour yourself, allow yourself to have those feelings, give yourself some time to process, and then just look at one step, just one step. I think that's a wonderful piece of advice.
Yeah, and I think it's about working out what is it that you particularly need to help you get through this time. So for me, for example, having a plan. Having a plan really helps me to feel like I can get through. So, for me now, it's about, okay, well, I have a medical plan with my doctor. So what happens if I get COVID again? Or what happens if this happens? What do we do? What's the plan? What do I need to focus on? That's something that really helps me. But everyone's individual. So being able to understand, what do you uniquely need as well, in getting you from one step to another, and allowing yourself to have those things, because some people might be like, well, plan's useless because it's so, but for me, I know having a plan really helps me to get through. So if that's what it takes to help you get through, do what works for you and what's important to you.
Yeah, exactly. Do what's right for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've shared some wonderful things with us today. So if people want to connect with you, where can they find you if they want a bit more of Shevonne?
Thank you so much for having me. So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So if they just do a search of my name, 𝙗𝙬𝙬𝙚 and Joyce, Joyce, they will find me there. And I'd love to connect with some of your listeners. I'd love to hear more about their journey. And, if they have stories about confidence or, experiences that they've been through, it'd be really great to share that, because I'm always, I'm a confident person, but I'm always open to other experiences of confidence as well. And I look forward to connecting with them there.
Excellent. Thank you. And we will put that in the show notes. And I strongly encourage everyone to connect with Shevonne, because her LinkedIn feed is always full of wonderful messages and inspiration and some really important social issues that we're facing and that you bring a different perspective to. So I strongly encourage everyone to link in with you, and I will put the link in the show notes. So once again, thank you for being with us and sharing your journey today. I know I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure our listeners did too. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, Shevonne.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
And thank you for listening to the Confidence in You podcast. Follow Helen on Instagram, HellenOxford100, on Facebook, Helen Luxford Coaching and Hypnosis, and on YouTube, Helen Luxford. And access more free resources on Helen's website, www.helenluxford.com. Music, Sunbeam by purpleplanet.com.